Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. The top 8 of 50 fragrances I acquired this year. And acquired is the operative word there because half the fragrances that I got via trade. And if you have a large fragrance collection, I highly recommend you start trading them. I use Kijiji, which is Canada's answer to Craigslist. Started in February. It really is a great way to expand your collection. Now, these are fragrances that I acquired this year. They're not all from this year. In fact, I only purchased 5 fragrances from 2024, and only one of them made the list. Now, I purchased them at the end of the year once the dust had settled, and I figured out which ones were more popular. I bought a lot of popular ones, but only one made the list, so that's something that you should bear in mind come Black Friday when you start to buy fragrances for Christmas. And that's why I made the list. I want to talk about some really good fragrances that I got this year that I think may be worthy of a purchase. And oddly, Black Friday of last year was the cutoff date to make up an entire year worth of purchases. And there really were exactly 50 fragrances. If there'd been 49, I would have put 49. These are 8 great ones. Fragrance number 1, this is Maison Margiela's Jazz Club. And I was fortunate enough to get a little bit of money from a relative via inheritance. And I had some holes in my collection. And this was one that I wanted for the longest time. And it filled the hole by getting Jazz Club. Now, I didn't always like Jazz Club, as I'm going to put a note that I made the third time that I tried it. I got different things every time. You can tell by the quote. I wasn't super happy with it, but oddly enough, over time, I've come to really like it. Now, this does have a kind of a pungent feel because it's meant to smell like heady cocktails and cigars. And cigar smoke is not always super pleasant. It's got a pungent quality, and so they use styrax, which is a balsamic note. They mix that with the pink pepper and the tobacco to give it kind of a, not the cleanest tobacco smell in the world. Now, I don't know why. I don't really get that much anymore, but when I first tried it, it was just like, So yeah, if you've tried Jazz Club and you don't like it right away, at least for me, I gave it some time. I really like it. The heady cocktails, there's rum in this. You definitely get some rum. There's some vanilla. It's a really nice fragrance. It's got great performance, 6-7 hours longevity, lots of projection. So glad to have this. Fragrance number 2, Boss Bottled Absolu 2024. And this is the one 2024 release that I'm having on this list. Although I do have to point out that there were 13 fragrances that really stood out to me. I'm only doing a top 8 list. I don't want to make the video too long. So just know that there were 5 other ones. I'm going to put them in the description as well. One of them was Boss the Scent Magnetic. That is also a great fragrance. But I'm talking about this one. This was the one 2024 release that made the list. And it's different in that it's got a balsamic accord, which is rare enough. But the balsamic accord for this is right near the top. You do not get that very often. Now, myrrh, which is prominent in this, which is a warm resin, can be done in a balsamic way. Davana, which is an herb, can also be done in a balsamic way. They were both done in balsamic ways to make that accord so prominent. And so this has, especially in the open, that's really where I pick it up, kind of a sour feel to it that definitely feels different. That does die down, and then you get the really nice sweet element that really, I think the dry down is better. So if you're a little bit put off by the open, don't be, because the rest of the dry down is fantastic. Phenomenal performance as well. So aside from the myrrh, there is also an incense note that in this case was done in a fresh resin way. So think olibanum. So there are 2 resins, the myrrh warm resin, the olibanum a fresh resin. There's also a lot of sweet patchouli. Patchouli, if you like patchouli, you're going to love this. Fragrance number 3, this is Bod Aure by Tom Ford. And boy, oh boy, was this a surprise. I traded a really good, very popular, discontinued designer fragrance for this. And the only reason I bought it was because it was a Tom Ford. Like, I'm not a barbershop guy. I like barbershop, but I don't love it. And I knew this was a barbershop, but I'm like, okay, it's a Tom Ford. So I traded it. But man, oh man, was this a massive surprise. The performance is absolutely incredible, both in terms of projection and longevity, and just the quality of the barbershop here is really good. There's a ton of lavender. It has 2 lavender notes off the top. It also has so many. Just think of just about any herbal note you can come up with. It has basil and rosemary. It has oak moss, of course. It has to have oak moss. It's got mint. So it's very, very herbal. There's this tiny hint of amber here, but the performance is great. The quality is great. The fragrance itself, just a massive surprise. If you'd told me that I would, one of the best fragrances of this year would be a barbershop, I would have said there's no way. Fragrance number 4, Ombr Sultan by Serge Lutens. This is my favorite currently of all my Serge Lutens fragrances. I have 3, and they're all good, but this is still my favorite. Now, bear in mind, though, I do like amber. When I talked about this in my last video, someone else who had like a dozen Serge Lutens said that they tried this and it wasn't their favorite, and that's fine, because this list is kind of subjective. Now, I do like amber. You do need to know that. But yeah, it is still my favorite. And it's interesting, though. It's an amber with a little bit of an herbal kick as well. So it's not just amber, but it is mostly amber. So there's an amber note. Then you've also got a generic resin note. Then you've got myrrh and benzoin, which are 2 warm resins, and that makes up the bulk of the amber. But the aromatic accord gives it a little hint of darkness, of interest. Bay leaves, there is oregano, there is myrtle, and then there is angelica. So those are all herbal notes. So it definitely has a little bit of an herbal kick, but it's a nice contrast to the sweetness of the amber. Great performance. And yeah, this one is my favorite Serge Lutens at the moment. Fragrances number 5 and 6 are both inexpensive. So I have a niche on this list. I have some designer, and I have a couple of cheapies. This is Perry Ellis Midnight. And this is very, very similar to The Most Wanted by Azzaro, but it's more in the $35 to $40 range at the discounters. What I love about it, though, is my other Perry Ellis fragrances have not had good performance. This one is great. I get at least 6 hours. I get a good dose of projection, $40 price tag, and it just smells really nice. You get vanilla and amber. There's a little hint of mandarin. You also get some cinnamon. It's all that good stuff that makes The Most Wanted like the most popular of that particular fragrance line, but it's pricey. And this one, I think, is a really good replacement. Now, this one is definitely has a little bit of a synthetic feel. It's not super noticeable, but it is there. That's what you expect with $40, but I still think it's an excellent, I'm not going to say exactly a clone, but kind of clone-like fragrance. I think it's a good buy. Fragrance number 6 is Lolita Limpa, and I had absolutely no business buying this fragrance. Every now and again when I go shopping, you get that little urge to splurge, especially in the drugstores. In Canada, they got these $20 Canadian specials, and I've wasted so much money on these over the years. This was one of those purchases that turned out, I would say 9 out of 10, they just sit on the shelf. I love this. I absolutely adore it. It was a complete fluke. And the thing about this one, though, is the anise. Anise is like a licoricey spice. So there's anise in this. There's also licorice to sort of back up the licoricey element, but the combination is just fantastic. There's also vanilla, there's a sugar note, and then there's a little hint of rum. But my God, I absolutely adore this fragrance. And surprisingly, considering this was a reformulated fragrance of an original that came out like 20 years ago, surprisingly, the performance, both projection and longevity, is fine. So again, $40, really good fragrance. I think most people would really like this. Fragrance number 7, this is Muskgrav Aour by Frederic Malle, and this fragrance is one that I've been wanting for like 3 or 4 years at least. I can't remember when I first got the sample. It was a while ago, and I've been putting it off, and the inheritance really did help me purchase this one because most expensive acquisition by far. I knew what I was getting, and I'm just so glad to be able to wear it when I can. 12-hour performance in terms of longevity, at least 2 or 3 hours of heavy projection. Very, very seductive fragrance. It's kind of weird though. It opens kind of, nondescript. You get a little bit of lavender, a little bit of tangerine in the open, and after 10 minutes that goes away, and then you get the bulk of what the fragrance is, which is pleasure, pain, which is complete polarization between the dark side and the light. So the light side is what you would expect. You get vanilla, tonka, amber, cinnamon, all that good stuff. And then the dark side is like gaiac wood and musk and animalic notes and cloves. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a big clash. And you're the winner because it's just fantastic. Fragrance number 8, if you've stayed this long, you get to hear what was the number 1 fragrance acquisition of this year, the first number 1 of 50. This is Guerlain Lum EDP. I have talked glowingly about this fragrance in the past, so I don't know if anybody's going to be too surprised, but this is definitely my favorite of the 50 acquisitions I made this year. People talk about it being a cherry fragrance, but I do think it's a little bit more than that. It's vanilla, cherry, there's some almond, there is some leather, but it's kind of there's a soft element to it where I find sometimes vanilla can be too overbearing. I do like powdery fragrances. I get a powdery element to this that other people don't. Powdery may not be the right word. It may be something else like a lighter vanilla. Either way, it lasts a long time. It's about 6 hours. It projects nicely, but it just doesn't it's not in your face. So yeah, Lum EDP. Anyway, I hope this does help people making purchases for Black Friday. I do think, though, that a lot of the releases, like I talked about so many fragrance releases this year, and so many of them I was like super hyped about them. And I mean, I haven't tried them all, obviously, but some of them just weren't that popular with people. And then I bought a few that were like super popular and I liked, but they weren't like life-changing the way some of the fragrances on this list were that were, really top end. So yeah, I mean, I hope it helps. Just bear in mind that there's a little bit of a subjective element here, but anyway, thanks for watching.